Hi, I'm Whitney.
And I'm Camden. Welcome to Ghosts and Garnets Murder in Idaho. I don't know why we get a kick out of it every time.
I don't know. It just gives me like a little pep in my step. I'm not sure why.
Because we're so excited. We're doing
We
it.
are. We love telling you guys these lunatic tales. And I was telling Cam today, so Camden and I are each always working on different stories to tell you guys. And so she'll be writing a script about a story and I'll be writing a script. And I've gotten into this truly terrible habit of starting a script and then getting distracted by a shiny new story and starting another script. And I think I have 7 scripts partially done at this point. And every time I sit down and am determined to finish one, I go down a rabbit hole about something and I'm like, this case is too big for one episode. I'm overwhelmed. I don't know what to do with it. And then I just give up and exit out and start looking at new things. And it's not a good time had by all. So this is when I wish that we worked in the same room so you could smack me, be like, get your life together.
I guess I could
Whitney. Are you flicking me at your microphone?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm not being productive.
I have to tell you that I had to get my favorite UPS driver back on track today. He lost his earbuds because he would listen to it while he was driving and delivering,
Oh,
and
okay,
I said,
yes.
because he's always like, Camden, I got another package for you. And I'm like, I feel so attacked, But anyway, I'm like, have you even been listening? And he said he lost his earbuds. I said, well, just open up one of my packages. I'll have some in the next delivery for you. And of course, he's like, no. Well, today he came in. He found them.
Oh, good.
Catching up.
Excellent.
And he told me that he cannot even handle Ballowiener.
Ballowiener has been a real hit. Yeah.
It's been a real hit, but what I'm hoping is like, can we get it in Webster's dictionary? Can it happen?
I feel like we just maybe need to have some sort of Ballowiener campaign.
Just like maybe we just need to submit it. Maybe it's as easy as being like, hey, look at this great word.
Yeah. Let's look into it.
Consider it done.
I also lost my earbuds that I wear when I am walking from the parking garage downtown to my office. And then if I'm walking around and, I wear them. And Russ got them for me for Christmas. And I don't know if I've ever met anybody who's so obsessed with different kinds of headphone situations than him. I mean, he researches them to death and is very particular. And I don't care at all. But I haven't been able to find him for the last couple of days. And I haven't told him that. But I did find a pair of janky ass, very old, very broken Apple like plug-in headphones that come with your phone, and they're like stripped and you can see the inside of the wire. And I put them in today to walk to my car after work. And I'm pretty sure I got electrocuted in my ear.
That's what's wrong with you.
So I don't think I can wear them anymore.
Can I give you a little PSA while we're on the subject?
Yeah.
Whitney Collins Rivera.
Yeah.
Are you telling me that you're walking around with 2 earbuds, canceling out the noise around you while you just walk around in downtown Boise? Tell me the truth.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how murders happen. I don't want to have to write something about you.
I am in the middle of very busy downtown Boise, walking 3 blocks from
people like this guy that we're talking about today don't give a shit if he's
That's true. That's
Boise
true.
In the daylight. You should only be wearing one.
That's true. You know what? And I always yell at Russ because he drives a very old vintage truck that does not have a stereo in it. And so I see him driving around town and he's got his headphones on while
No,
he's driving, which is
stop it.
illegal. And you know that I'm not, heavy-handed with the law following, but I mean, that's so dangerous. And I'm like, you are a brown man in Boise, Idaho. You are going to get pulled over with your headphones on in your old truck, and I'm going to see you up against the curb one day.
Okay, well, Whitney, you are a white woman who could be mistaken for a brown woman walking around walking around with 2 earbuds in. And somebody's going to come up and
this
rape
story, you may think twice. It didn't make me think twice.
Yeah, not
maybe
you.
You're smarter than me.
Don't get crazy. We only talk about murders every day. Literally. It's fine. Everything's fine. She's going to be fine.
Yeah. All right. So the story we have for you guys today is one that nightmares are made of, and a truly horrifying example of what can happen when obvious signs of severe mental illness are ignored. So this case is complicated by a couple of different things. This man has a very severe mental illness, and I don't want to discount that, but he is also a total douche. And so those things aren't mutually exclusive, Like his douchiness is not canceled out by the fact that he is also mentally ill.
Yeah, no, for sure.
We will be talking some shit, and I don't want people to yell at us after this and say, well, he's mentally ill. Yes, he is mentally ill, and we're going to give him a lot of leeway for the mental illness stuff, but he's also just the worst.
Just the
beyond
worst.
That.
Bottom line.
Yeah. Yes.
Facts.
Yes. So we are going to talk very briefly about schizophrenia. So schizophrenia is a very serious mental health disorder in which people interpret reality abnormally. Schizophrenia may result in some combination of hallucinations, delusions, extremely disordered thinking and behavior that impairs daily functioning, and it can be completely disabling. People with schizophrenia require lifelong treatment. They don't know a lot about schizophrenia. It is treatable. There are medications for it, but just like most everything else, it's on a spectrum. And some people have very severe cases of it. And while some other people, it's fairly manageable. But the exact causes are unknown. Research suggests a combination of physical, genetic, psychological, and environmental factors can make a person more likely to develop the condition. And some people may just be more prone to it, and a stressful or emotional life event might trigger a psychotic episode. And what's interesting about schizophrenia is people don't usually sort of come into the schizophrenia until their mid to late 20s. So they can be very sort of quote unquote normal behaving up until their brains sort of stop developing in their mid to late 20s. And at that point, that seems to be when the majority of cases are diagnosed. Sometimes it's earlier, sometimes it's in teenage years, but for the most part, it's when mid to late 20s. So this guy, we'll get into it, but just so you're aware, he's the worst for other reasons. I just cannot express to you enough how just awful of a person in general he is.
Well, let's tell him about it. Let's get into it.
Okay, so we're going to Bayview, Idaho, guys. Bayview, Idaho is way the hell up north. We've been spending a lot of time up north lately. Well, this is way up there. And it is surrounded by a state park and national forest right next to the Canadian border. It's located on beautiful Lake Pend Oreille. Now, Lake Pend Oreille is not for swimming, ladies and gentlemen. It is derived from an actual glacier. It is glacier water in there.
Brr, brr.
Brr. And in Bayview, they call life jackets body recovery devices because the water is so cold that most people die before they can be rescued.
That was from the show. The really
Yes.
terrible show.
Yes.
Yes.
We both watched a truly terrible, very fictionalized account of this story, which I wish I hadn't have watched at all.
Same. Well, I
Yeah.
didn't even
So
finish it. Was that
I think
enough?
that's the only thing I actually took away from it.
I love it.
Yeah. Yes. And it's also a sort of, seasonal town. It's very popular in the summertime. And then in the off season from, October-ish until May or June, it's a ghost town with only around 500 permanent residents. So some of those residents were a lovely family, a woman named Lorraine Yvonne Wallace, and she goes by Yvonne. Yvonne was a retired hairdresser, and she lived with her son, Mike, his wife, Patty, and grandson, Jed, who was an adult. And they all lived together in a mobile home in Bayview, right on the lake. Yvonne had retired because she had some health issues. And so Mike's wife, Patty, helped her with whatever she needed around the house. They were an incredibly close-knit family. They were very well liked within the Bayview community, and they were known to help their neighbors. In December of 2010, 28-year-old Larry Cragun, his wife Katie, and their daughter Emma moved into a trailer about 75 feet from the Heath family. They had moved to Bayview when Larry had gotten a job working for the marina. The Heath family were the first to welcome Larry and Katie and Emma to town. And they had the family over for a barbecue, sort of to get to know them and, just to be nice people. The Cragun move into Bayview would prove to be life-changing for not only his family, but the Heath family as well, and not in a good way.
So let's talk about Larry's life. Larry was born in Sandpoint, Idaho. He said he had fond memories of his early years. He has no memories of any kind of trauma or abuse. He remembers fishing with his dad. He said he was very shy and well-behaved until he was around 6 years old when his family moved into a new neighborhood. According to him, the older kids in the area were really into drugs and drinking, and at 6 years old, he started, quote unquote, working in order to buy drugs. At 6 years old. That is insane.
Insane.
I can't even imagine. You're still a little tiny baby then. As he recounts it, he and the neighborhood kids would steal drugs from their parents, and he was regularly doing cocaine in grade school.
I don't know how real this is, to be honest. I get a little liar, liar, pants on fire vibe from him, but this is what he says.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
His parents divorced when he was 13, and he was high most of the time at school after that. According to him, so we're taking that with a grain of salt, he always had a very good work ethic and didn't start committing crimes until his late teens. He collected a handful of battery and aggravated battery charges, as well as a DUI and drug possession charge by his early 20s. At this point, Larry was also a full-blown meth addict. All right, so now he's living in Vancouver, Washington with a woman who he regularly abused. One night, he and the girlfriend got drunk while she was also pregnant and got into an altercation in an Albertsons grocery store parking lot. The police were called and he was ordered to stay away from her. But rather than stay away from each other or break up like rational people, they decided to move to Idaho instead. They got into another drunken brawl in a bar, and Larry was arrested and ordered to do a writer program for a year. Throughout all of this, Larry's love affair with meth was growing strong. At some point, he met and married Katie. They had Emma, and they moved to Bayview. He started having what he assumed were meth-induced hallucinations, and hearing voices in his head was becoming a regular occurrence.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, while assuming it was related to long-term meth use was a good guess, it was the incorrect one. Soon after the move, Larry and Katie's marriage, which was not rock solid to begin with, starts to fall apart and Larry starts to spend time at the local bar. As time goes by, the neighbors started noticing Larry changing. He went from friendly and outgoing to angry and withdrawn. Years passed, and Larry's life is falling apart. He starts to show signs of losing touch with reality. Larry and Jed, the neighbor's son, become friendly, and they lift weights together on occasion at Larry's place. One day, Jed had an encounter with Larry that would be a grim foreshadowing of Larry's darker side. Larry was supposed to be spotting Jed while he was bench pressing, and Jed began to struggle with the weight. He asked Larry to help him. Instead of helping Jed lift the bar, Larry stared at Jed, watching him fight with the weight of the bar above his throat for a few minutes before finally helping him. He said in a later interview that the voices told him to drop the weights on Jed's neck. What a vulnerable position to be in. That's so terrifying.
Uh-huh. Just being like, dude, help me. Help me. And he's just
Looking
staring at you, like blankly.
Yeah.
Yes. And there were some contradictory accounts of how long Larry and Katie were in Bayview before all of this started to happen. Some of them said a couple of years. Some of them said pretty quickly after they moved to there. There wasn't a whole lot of information. It doesn't make that much of a difference really in the story. And unfortunately, Larry is not a super reliable historian.
Say what?
All the years of drug use have not made him the best memory man for storytelling.
Memory keeper. I'm watching you struggle with memory creeper. Remember
the memory
man. The
Yeah.
memory man. Or the non-memory man.
Listen, it's 7:15 p.m. and I am
Where you are, baby, it's
I'm
only
past my
6:15 Okay.
All right. So around this time, Larry loses his job. Katie has had quite enough of his bullshit and decides she's going to take Emma and move to Coeur d'Alene with her family and divorce Larry.
Good move, Katie.
Yeah, good move, Katie. What remains of Larry's mental faculties at this point were barely functioning. The voices had been steady for almost 8 months at this point. And, unfortunately, the symptoms of long-term meth use are very similar to the symptoms of schizophrenia.
That's so interesting.
And so I think for him, he was like, shit, I'm really losing it. So at this point, he says that he started dating someone new and got clean and sober for the first time in years and was sober for about 6 months. He said he was going to every church he could find. He tried to get an exorcism because the voices were getting so bad and were just continuing no matter what he did. He hadn't had any drugs in 6 months. He didn't know why it was just continuing to get worse and worse and worse. So on top of the auditory hallucinations, he was also experiencing what he called apparitions. There was a man that he called the Oracle, who he thought was his guide on this sort of trip he was taking in his head. He said he saw apparitions that looked like Egyptian gods standing outside of his windows at night. He said the spirits were always violent, always encouraging him to hurt people, telling him that everyone was hurting his family. And he said he knew that the spirits were not his friends. He said he had had sort of strange visions his whole life, but he had never told anybody because he didn't want to come across as crazy, and also because the prolonged meth use had all of these same symptoms. But this is when his symptoms start to become apparent to other people other than his poor wife or, whoever he's living with at the time. He is now calling the FBI to ask if the FBI is following him.
Listen, man, they're not going to tell you if they.
Right. Soon after this, Yvonne and Bill and Patty and Jed are all having dinner when there is a knock at their door. A policeman was there saying that Larry had called the police to report that they had broken into his house, messed with his food, and hurt his dog. The family had absolutely no idea what the police were talking about and said so. Now, Larry, around this time, called the police more than 20 times over the period of a couple of weeks, reporting that the family was poisoning him, that they were breaking into his home and messing with his food. He accused Jed of putting a pubic hair in his food.
Yeah.
Deputies would come out, they could find nothing to substantiate any of his claims, and determined that Larry's allegations were false and unfounded. But Larry did not believe the deputies. And Michael Heath told deputies that Larry was always angry, and it seemed to be getting worse over the last few weeks. And he was, at this point, often shouting at the family from his home and throwing snowballs at them.
That's so random. I don't love a good snowball fight, in case you're wondering.
Yeah. Then Larry posts an open letter to the community accusing the federal government of invading his mind and saying that his wife had been raped by the community. The letter claimed neighbors in Bayview have taken bribes to cover up the hideous crimes of rape. This letter said surveillance in the form of a brain frequency generator capable of invading the mind had been unleashed on the community. His former wife, Katie, denied any sexual assaults ever happening. Now, I understand it's 2010. I understand it's a very small community. But if you are having this lunatic, someone is calling your police department over and over and over again, putting crazy shit up all over town, saying that the community is raping his wife and that the government is somehow brainjacking them, do you think maybe one person would go, this guy seems a little bit off his rocker. Maybe we should 5150 his ass?
Yeah, but having worked in that environment, it's so hard. It is so hard. It is not easy for 5150 people, and it's not easy to keep them there. Maybe he would have been easy to keep there because he obviously was clinically having, issues. But it's so hard. What laws is he breaking?
I get
No,
it.
I know. I'm just saying, it's so hard to get somebody to intervene, especially when there's no family.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's just it's like watching a car accident happen, but like
Right.
so much worse than a car accident. It's like watching a hammer attack happening.
Is that what it's like?
Yeah.
Well, I know hindsight's 2020. It's, that's almost in so many of these that we do. It's that way.
Well, and I feel like the conversation about mental health over the last couple of years has really increased.
For sure,
and I feel like it's a lot more, people are more willing to talk about it and be open about things. And I think if this happened today, that things would have been handled differently. I think they were like, this guy's a drug addict, clearly off his rocker. But
well, and I think the part of that problem is, and I think it would be problem today too, is that he was a frequent drug user.
Yeah.
And so
yeah, no, I agree.
hard.
I think that was a very easy pointing to, look at him. I mean, he's a drug addict. Of course he's fucking crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Over the next few weeks, Yvonne and her family noticed strange noises coming up from outside of their home in the middle of the night. Mike and Jed investigated, but they didn't find anything. And Larry, at this point, is yelling at them on a daily basis. Still throwing snowballs at them. It's still calling them names. He is obviously escalating. One day, Larry put together a plan of sorts. He got a tux jacket.
A tuxedo, yeah. Larry, the drug addict.
Got a tux coat, and his nicest clothes, and a knife, and hammer as a kit for if he needed to kill the neighbors. He put all these items in a drawer for safekeeping. He wasn't sleeping at this point, would stand for hours at night hallucinating. His girlfriend was worried about him and started feeding him handfuls of melatonin to try to get him to sleep. I don't know how she slept next to him.
I would be terrified.
Well, you're so vulnerable when you're sleeping. Like, no thank you, sir. On December 19th, he has this brilliant idea to drive to Coeur d'Alene to buy some spice at a smoke shop to help him relax. Relax. He smoked some in the parking lot and went to McDonald's. That's a solid plan. That's a plan he should have stayed with. As he sat in the car in the McDonald's parking lot, the voices told him the community and his neighbors were raping his wife and molesting his kids. They would not stop. In a later interview, Larry said at this point, he said out loud to the voices, "You're talking to a murderer now." And he drove back to Bayview. He got out his fancy kit and put his fancy clothes on before picking up the hammer and the knife. He walked over to the Heath's back door and opened it. He said that he walked in quietly, and the Heath's small dog started barking. Jed walked around the corner, and Larry said, "What's up, punk?" to Jed, before hitting him in the head twice with the hammer. Then he attacked Patty and Yvonne and went back and forth between them, bashing them with the hammer in their heads until they were motionless. He threw the knife at Mike. Larry said Mike made a noise like a primal scream, and Larry chose that moment to walk out of the trailer.
Yeah.
That is truly terrifying.
There is something about a hammer attack that is so vicious and
violent,
intense, and
gory, and
yes,
just really I don't know what the word, I don't want to say barbaric because that's such a lame ass
it is
word,
barbaric.
But it is.
It's like an old time weapon. It's like if he took out a mace, or he took out, it's like an old timey weapon designed to do the most damage that it can do. And then to add to this horror, this family, so Mike Heath, he was only minorly injured. The knife had sort of grazed him, and he runs to the phone and tries to call 911 multiple times, but keeps getting the message that the number he is calling cannot be reached. Somehow on this day, something funky goes wrong with the Bayview telephone system.
Is that what it was?
And he cannot get through to 911. Yes. So he can't get through to 911. His wife and mom are slumped over. His mom's on the couch, and his wife Patty is in the chair, and he's next to Patty, and he's trying to stop the bleeding in her head, and she's unconscious. And then Jed wakes up, and he goes over and starts trying to help his grandmother. And finally, 45 minutes after the hammer attack, Mike gets through to 911, and the ambulance is dispatched. Meanwhile, Larry went to the bar. Okay? He walks in, covered in blood, still holding the hammer.
In his tux jacket?
In his fancy outfit. He puts the hammer on top of the bar and is sort of sitting there snickering to himself, like laughing to himself. And when the bartender asks Larry what happened, Larry laughs and says, "I just murdered 4 people on the hill." Now, Patty's best friend, Deborah, just happened to be in the bar at that time, and she hears him, and she knows the people on the hill are the Heath family. So she yells for the bartender to call the police, and she runs to her car and rushes to the Heath home. When she arrives, the ambulance still is not there yet. And Yvonne is conscious, but she's in very rough shape. And Patty is sort of in and out of consciousness at this point. Finally, first responders arrive. They walk into a complete bloodbath. Yvonne and Patty are transported to a local hospital where Yvonne is rushed into surgery. When she wakes up, she is told that Patty had died from her injuries. Back at the bar, Larry grabbed a customer's beer, drank it down, left $1 on the bar, according to the police report, before walking out. He then sort of walks around town for a bit. He walked into the Mercantile to use the phone, but the owner of the Mercantile knew him to be a cuckoo bird and wouldn't let him in. And so Larry left, and he went to a local restaurant that this sort of friend of his owned, and he sat down, covered in blood, ordered a coffee, and then called the police on himself. During the investigation, Larry's girlfriend, her name was Christine, told investigators that Larry often carried a hammer, but that he isn't capable of, quote, of hurting anyone, and if he did, it would only be in self-defense. So this asshole is walking around town carrying a hammer, and she thinks that's acceptable.
Well, what in the actual, because the thing is she's dosing this guy with melatonin because he won't sleep because he's a crazy person and she's scared.
Because he's seeing Egyptian gods outside of their house, and he's carrying a hammer around town, and she's like, he wouldn't hurt anyone with the fucking hammer that he's yielding.
She is a dum-dum.
He just walked into this family's house on a fucking Saturday afternoon.
Okay, so before the trial began, a Boise doctor completed a mental health examination of Larry and determined that he was mentally unfit to proceed with trial. First District Court Judge Benjamin Simpson suspended criminal proceedings until Cragun could understand what's going on in court and aid in his own defense. Following treatment, Cragun was found to be competent to stand trial, and in May of 2012, Larry pled guilty to the charges after 2 experts took the stand saying Cragun is schizophrenic. Before sentencing Cragun, the judge did say his own brother is schizophrenic, saying he has some understanding of how mental illness impacts families. Cragun was sentenced to 30 years in prison for the murder of Patricia Heath and won't be eligible for parole until after 30 years. He also received 15-year sentences on 2 aggravated battery charges and 15 years on an attempted murder charge, with all sentences running concurrently. Patty's husband, Mike, said of the sentence, quote, I think he should have gotten a lot longer. The heinousness of the crime. My wife is not going to get parole in 30 years. Yvonne had to have multiple surgeries to put her skull back together. Larry Cragun said that while he pled guilty, it took him a while to realize the people he killed weren't child molesters. When he got to prison, inmates treated him like a hero because they thought he killed child molesters. It wasn't until months later it occurred to him that he killed innocent people. He said he was in prison for years before he got his schizophrenia managed. He said one day he was in admin segregation and the voices came back and he thought he was being poisoned by quantum energy. He was sent back to the mental ward and he was medicated, and he said it was like a switch turned off and everything went away. He calls it a gift and a curse. His family still loves him. He hopes a miracle happens and he gets out at some point. He thinks the world is under a veil of darkness. Or maybe it was just the spice.
So, guys, he did an interview from prison after he had been in prison for a few years, okay? After he had been medicated, after they had sorted out his shit, and he was clear-headed and rational and not in the midst of a mental breakdown, okay? You can find this interview on YouTube if you want. It's truly painful to listen to. So I'm going to give you just
Truly.
a quick rundown. Essentially, he has no remorse for what he's done. He's real bummed he's in prison and doesn't think it's fair that he doesn't have a chance to get out. He has gotten in super good shape.
Super good.
Super good shape, super buff. COVID hit. He gained 80 pounds, but he's working out in the gym again. You know, he's getting fit. And he cannot be bothered to even recall the names of the people he attacked or the woman that he murdered. He calls them in this interview, he called Yvonne the old one several times. And Patty, the woman that he bludgeoned to death with a hammer, he calls her the other one.
His listening to him talk, he was just so like, I mean, you could definitely tell he loved having somebody pay attention to him
Oh,
and
yes.
ask him these questions.
Yes.
But he was just so blasé about it. Was like
Totally.
somebody telling their life story.
Mm-hmm.
They're very boring, normal, everyday life story.
Yes.
It's bizarre.
Yeah. He was more upset about the fact that like he wasn't going to get out of prison than he was about anything else. I'm sure he has other diagnoses other than the schizophrenia. I'm sure he is a full-blown fucking narcissist. Yeah, you can tell he loves hearing his own voice. He loves talking about himself. You were not at 6 years old working in order to buy yourself some cocaine. Okay? Okay?
No, you aren't, sir.
That is not happening. All right? That did not happen. And especially, where was he? Where was he born? Sandpoint? You're not copping cocaine at 6 years old in Sandpoint, Idaho. Okay, Larry?
No.
It's just so aggravating. And, you know, the terrible, terrible show that we watched totally left out the fact that he was a drug addict, the fact that he was a criminal, the fact that he had beaten several women prior to him being married. I mean, it left all of that out. It was just like he was this normal family man who suddenly moved to Bayview and then went cuckoo bird for no reason.
Right, and became oddly obsessed with a girl who had killed her family with a hammer.
Yeah. Good segue.
Anytime.
Yeah, guys, we're going to talk about Idaho. Because guess what? This is not the first and only hammer attack that happened in Bayview, Idaho. There was another one. So on September 4th, 1949, a 15-year-old girl told police that she had bludgeoned her sleeping father to death with a hammer because, quote, he wouldn't keep his promises to take me places. H. Hanner, Kootenai County Sheriff, said the girl, Charlotte Burns, and her 12-year-old brother, Louis, were arrested Sunday by William Robinson, Farragut Police Chief, as they came out of the brush where they had spent the night. The girl told Hanner she beat her father, Charles Burns, about 65, to death as he lay asleep in bed at their home in Cedar Creek in Bonner County at about 6:30 p.m. on Saturday. Hanner said the girl, with blood still on her hands and tears in her eyes, related how her brother entered the room as she struck the first blow and then stood by and watched her as she struck her father again and again. The pair then went out to the barn, Charlotte told Hanner, and helped their mother with the chores. As Mrs. Burns went to feed some stock, they took a rowboat and rowed across Lake Ponterey to Bayview, Idaho, where they spent the night in the brush.
My God.
Yep.
Speaking of mental illnesses.
Yes, she was pissed. She was pissed that he did not have any follow through.
Because he didn't take her fishing. That was one of the things.
He did not take her out on that boat. Yeah.
He did not.
Mm-hmm.
Raising kids is hard.
Yeah. I just, this poor family that this happened to, just living their lives. And this poor woman had to have multiple surgeries to put her head back together again. They moved. I think they moved to Coeur d'Alene because they couldn't be in Bayview anymore. This man lost his wife. This son lost his mom. I'm sure they're totally fucked up. Yvonne got beaten in the head with a hammer. You are not going to be okay after that, no matter how
No,
many surgeries you have. That is
no, I
a
think
traumatic brain injury. And
yeah.
and Jed, the grandson, got whacked in the head twice with a hammer too.
I cannot imagine how that would feel.
And I do not think that Larry Cragun would have done this had he not been a schizophrenic. I do not think that. I think this had
No, I
everything
don't
to
either.
do with his mental illness. I fully think if he had been treated appropriately and that he had asked for help and that he had, I don't think this would have happened in a million years. I don't think he would have
No, I
attacked his
agree.
family.
I completely agree. And what is just so interesting to me, I guess, is where these hallucinations and these voices, where this information gets manifested from. Like to be
Mm-hmm.
pulling things out of, they seem like so far out of left field. It's just so, I mean, you can't understand it, I don't think fully if you don't go through it, but
And I wonder, I know very little about schizophrenia, but I wonder if it always manifests as something sort of evil and angry and makes you paranoid. And,
I don't
I
think
wonder if
so.
it's scary. He said he knew that these apparitions were not his friends. He said he knew that, but he just could not get them to stop talking. So he finally just gave up and did what they said.
Kind of like people who make false declarations of
Mm,
guilt. It's so
yeah.
similar. You just
Yeah.
tormented and tormented to the point where you just like want some
You just
form
want to be
of
done.
right release.
Yeah. And I mean, he even said in this interview, it's like the one glimpse that you got of an actual human person in this entire horrifying interview that he does. But he says, he thought if he did what they asked, it would stop. And yeah, that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah.
You have been in my head screaming at me to hurt these people that you say are hurting my family for the last 8 months. And I'm not sleeping. And I'm going to buy spice, which I don't think people realize, but spice is like it is not this sort of fake tobacco that sort of relaxes you. This is like an unregulated synthetic weed that can really do like fucked up stuff to your brain. It's like bath salts, makes you eat someone's face
Uh,
off.
you tell me it's not the wacky tobacco.
It is not. It is the scary stuff, the scary
You know
spice.
what scares me?
What?
Bath salts, bath salts and meth. That scares me a lot. Why do people want to keep eating people on bath salts? What is happening?
Eating their faces off.
Yeah.
Um, I listened to this great podcast. It's a British podcast called Red Handed, and they do like little mini episodes sometimes. And they did a mini episode last week or the week before about not just bath salts, but the sort of spice and bath salts and all of these sort of synthetic things that you can buy that you really shouldn't be able to buy because people are just taking crazy shit and putting it together. And then you have no
Yeah.
idea how it's going to affect you. And because it's not regulated in any way, there's no way to dose something. And so they were telling these stories of like these people that were like eating people's faces off, or this girl who smoked some pot and then totally killed her mom because her weed had been laced with something that they put in bath salts and she didn't know. And it made her fucking
That is
crazy
what's
and she
scary.
killed her mom.
That's what's so scary to me, I think.
Yeah. Guys, don't buy the spice at the tobacco shop, okay? It's not a good time. It's not natural. It's not from the
Just
earth. Go buy a gummy,
there's so
you
many
know?
things I want to say right now, but like that trip to McDonald's was a good idea.
Yeah. I mean, have some
Just
French fries. The best in the
have
West.
some French fries. Do you
Is there
want to know?
anything better than a McDonald's French fry? I just don't think so.
Not really. And
No.
I on the TikTok. There's a guy who has like these fast food secrets. I don't even know how he got on my side of the TikTok because
He's in your
it's like
algorithm now.
yeah, I guess. But did you know that you can get an actual like basket of fries at McDonald's?
I saw that, but it was a girl on my TikTok who was
Oh,
showing me that.
a basket of McDonald's French fries? Yes, please.
I wonder if that's a real thing, like
Yeah,
where we
because
live,
TikTok.
you know?
Listen, here's what I'm gonna tell you right now. TikTok doesn't lie. TikTok is just like the internet, where if Abraham Lincoln says it's true, it's true.
Poor Abe.
Are we gonna try the? Let's do it one
Yeah.
night. So Whitney and
Yeah.
I are getting ready to plan a ghost hunting extravaganza at the penitentiary, at the old penitentiary
Yes,
in
we
Bayview.
are.
So we're also gonna see if we can get a basket of French fries at McDonald's. And we'll
Yeah.
keep you posted
Before
on
we
both.
get the bejesus scared out of us. Because we know we have not been bringing the spook. We know we've been hitting you with some really good stories, but we have not brought you any kind of spooky since November. And we were in hibernation. Okay. We are winter hibernators. We don't really go out in the world, but we are planning a venture out in order to get scared shitless and entertain you.
It's gonna be, I feel like it's gonna be very entertaining, if nothing else.
We are also making our friend Erin come with us, and she is not excited at all.
No,
She
she's
does
not
not want
excited.
to go.
I think she might be mad at us.
We'll get her a
And I
basket
think
of French fries. It'll be fine.
if I get her a basket of French fries and a Diet Coke from McDonald's, she'll be a happy camper, but she's still gonna be mad at us.
Oh, for sure.
She's
I think I will be
definitely-
mad at us. I think I'm going to be 10 minutes in and be like, I fucking hate us. Why do we do
I'm
this?
so excited.
Yeah, so we got to figure out what story about what inmate we want to tell. I have one and I've been saving it because I really want to do it for like our first live show. And it's such a good story and it's amazing. And I've been saving it, but I also feel like he's probably one of the ghosts at the pen. And it would be such a good story to record while we were there. Because we could
We'll have to
record like right where he died. Camden's eyes are like the most excited I've ever seen her.
Oh, it's the little
She
things
looks
in life.
positively gleeful.
No.
All right, guys, quick announcement. Next week, we are closing out the voting for our 25th episode. We are letting our patrons, our subscribers on Patreon, decide. The options for our 25th episode are The Life and Crimes of Joseph Edward Duncan, The Disappearance of Stephanie Crane, and The Murder of Cassie Jo Stoddart. So if you would like to have a vote, please head on over to Patreon. You can find our link to get there in the show notes. It says support the show, and you can get signed up. Not only do you get to vote for our 25th episode, you also get our backlogged monthly patron bonus episodes and our Friday video show, Let's Get Intimate. So head over and check that out.
And that is the story of Larry Cragun and his schizophrenic demons and meth and spice. And not everything nice. Hope you enjoyed hanging out with us today.
Oh, man. Yes, if you did, please give us a like wherever you listen to your podcasts. It would mean the world. If you have any suggestions on a story you would like to hear, or if you would like to sponsor the show, you can reach us at ghostsandgarnets@gmail.com. We are also on Facebook at Ghosts and Garnets, Murder in Idaho, and Instagram at Ghosts and Garnets Podcast. Thanks so much for listening.
See you next time.